And it's just been the same old story for the past 2 months or so. Defense can't stop the run at all. Offense hasn't fallen off a cliff the same way, but it hasn't been as consistent.
I'm not saying it's easy to lose both your coordinators and just kind of like continue where you left off, but it seems like it's got to be from the locker room to me. What's wrong with the Eagles and how do they fix it? Let us know in the comments, guys. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Season 2 of FanBuzz Weekly. I'm your host, Patrick, with my co-host, Will, here, and we're breaking down the biggest stories and hottest takes in sports. Season 2, and I can't get the intro right. What do you know? Will, how we doing? Are we excited for Season 2 here?
Absolutely loved college football being kind of the center of attention in Season 1, but there's so much more to get into. NFL playoffs have been interesting to say the least so far, and then obviously we've got March Madness baseball, so much more coming up this spring, so can't wait to break it all down.
Yeah, and speaking of NFL playoffs, they've been incredible, and I got to give a shout out as a resident Florida man here of the pod to the Bucks, the underdog Bucks, taking down the Eagles. Of all people, Baker Mayfield, his story has actually been sort of incredible. Do we think we could be calling Baker Mayfield a Super Bowl champion by the end of these playoffs?
Oh man, I'm probably the biggest Baker guy you'll meet. It hasn't come up on the show because, like I said, we've been doing college, but I love the guy. When I was in college, I drove all the way out to Cleveland to see him play in freezing weather. I'm so happy he's having a great year, setting career highs across the board. And frankly, after he was almost out of the league last year, should probably be comeback player of the year. But we won't get into the whole Hamlin Flacco vortex. I do not think that this team has any chance to win the Super Bowl, really. I think they can. We'll get to the games this week in a bit. I think they can compete in Detroit. But I think I've been pretty open about the fact that I think the Ravens are a juggernaut who are going to roll everyone they see by 10 points or more. Again, we'll talk about them more later. But even if the Bucks are able to fight their way through the Niners next weekend, the Ravens are a buzzsaw.
Yeah, I don't. Who do they have? The Lions here coming up. I don't.
Yeah,
see
Lions,
it.
then probably Niners, then Ravens, probably.
I don't see them getting through the Lions in Detroit. That, first of all, that fan base in Detroit right now is as rabid as anyone. I think I saw that ticket prices for that game alone were like $700 or whatever to get in the door, which I think it was like setting records for whatever playoff game this is. But yeah, man, I wouldn't bet against Dan Campbell right now. No one has his team more fired up than that. I know Todd Bowles and that defense look great. You even got Big Vita Vea stopping the the tush push. But I don't really see it unless Baker can channel, that inner Heisman in him. I don't think it's gonna happen.
No, I mean, you nailed a lot of it on the head. Shout out to those Detroit fans, man. I mean, I've said many times that Detroit is my favorite fan base. I'm not even a part of it. I like it a lot more than the fan bases I'm a part of. Northeast fandoms are challenging. But yeah, they really deserve this win. I'm sure we'll talk about them more in a bit, but just love seeing what they're doing in Detroit. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and coming up on the show, we will be previewing these playoff games. We'll be talking about the Bills, Chiefs, the NFL coaching carousel, which is, I mean, just if it's a carousel, it is spinning crazier than ever right now. Kalen DeVore at Alabama after Nick Saban's retirement. We'll do predictions for the NFL Divisional Round. We'll do take the over. If you guys are new to us, we usually take the over in one game, and I usually get it wrong. I would trust Will with your money if you're going to do that. And then also, did you see this? Will be our last segment. So let's get into it. We're going to start with Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes. I don't think I ever get sick of watching this matchup. Obviously, we had that overtime game that was super controversial with the rules, and they got changed. Will, how do you see this one going? It's Mahomes' first road playoff game of his career, and he has to go to Buffalo. What do we think here?
Oh my God, the memes are already incredible. Like the ones Taylor Swift seeing the drunkest person she's ever seen in her life jump through a burning table. Oh man, the atmosphere is going to be amazing. I mean, as much as I dislike the Bills and at times their fans, I will not deny that there's a lot of energy. I mean, you'd be silly to deny that. This is going to be fun. I think the Bills have been the better team top to bottom this year, especially since the Rasul Douglas trade, when the Packers kind of fell off and thought they were sellers. We'll talk about them in a minute, but the Bills were definitely the beneficiaries there. That being said, the Chiefs, because of the weird weather situation, the Chiefs have a 2-day rest edge, which is tremendous, especially because the Bills picked up even more injuries in that game. Linebacking core and secondary are both banged up. Stephon Diggs and Connor McGovern probably playing. They came back into the last game, but they're not 100%. So I think the Chiefs have the edge here. I'm not betting against Pat and Reed versus Josh and McDermott, even though Josh has been better than Mahomes this season. Doesn't mean in the big picture he's the one I'm going to put my money on when the season's on the line. I do think this is a tight one, but if you have to back someone, it's got to be KC. You can't bet against this team.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm rocking with the Chiefs in the playoffs all the time. Apparently, Josh Allen sent a warning to the Chiefs though, saying that the Bills are a team that is not easily conquered. And I mean, I gotta agree. What are they, like 6-0 in their last 6 games or something? I mean, either way, this game is gonna produce fireworks. We're sure of that, right? We're gonna get Taylor Swift memes. I don't know if you saw her mom or Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's mom doing the swag surf. Like what? Also, the swag surf. Like what a throwback. Either way, this is gonna be one of the most entertaining games. Even if the game sucks, we're gonna get Taylor Swift memes out the wazoo. But yeah, I think I'm going to rock the Chiefs too here. And we'll get to our actual predictions later. But I think this is almost a statement game for Mahomes to have to go on the road in the playoffs. Not to necessarily solidify his legacy, because that's already been solidified, but so that people can't call him a fraud in the playoffs and say he's, some baby who needs his crib at home.
Absolutely. I mean, it'll be a narrative that immediately starts if he loses his first road playoff game. But I do think they're in good shape. We'll get more into the picks, but the key thing I want to throw out is the Chiefs they ended the regular season with the best pressure rate in the entire NFL. And if there's one thing we know about Josh Allen and his Achilles heel, is even though he's an athlete, if you can get heat on him, he will lose his mind and make mistakes. So if the Chiefs are able to accomplish that, I think they're in good shape.
All right, let's get into the NFL coaching carousel. We've already seen some big names interview with teams, namely Bill Belichick interviewed with the Falcons, which has just produced memes, obviously, for obvious reasons. We saw Jim Harbaugh interview with the Chargers. There's a lot of candidates that I think a lot of teams would be willing to have. You've got Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, Dan Quinn could be on the move. Who do you think actually goes to one of these teams if you have any sort of pick at all?
That Belichick Falcons interview has to have been hilarious. Question number one, you're given a 25-point lead at halftime in the Super Bowl. What do you do to protect it? Don't take 3 sacks and 2 holding penalties on one drive. But also, Coach Jim interviewed with the Falcons too. So that job, it looks like after having one of the most disappointing seasons in the NFL, the Falcons are going to have their pick of the biggest names, although I don't think they get either one. I think Bill Belichick is going to the Commanders. He's going home. He's a Maryland guy. And they're going to have a chance to get a great quarterback. And I can't imagine that Bill wouldn't be hyped to pick one spot ahead of the Patriots and just snipe whoever they have their eye on, because he probably has had his eye on the Pats draft boards for months. I don't know how much they'll change without him, but he will have insight. Meanwhile, I think Coach Jim's going to LA. They're still the San Diego Chargers to me. But I do think he will end up there. The opportunity to coach an embattled young quarterback with the talent of Herbert just seems like a Jim Harbaugh moment. Like he'll just have like weekly sleepovers where they watch like Pixar movies and break down film. I seriously think he could do an awesome job. Jim's a great developer. But as far as that Falcons job, I do think they're going to have to go with an offensive guy after Arthur Smith kind of failed. The defense, they're going to have to bring in a great coordinator, but I do think the guy at the helm needs to be developing the offensive talent. I'm thinking Ben Johnson or Bobby Slowick. If I'm them, I'm doing Slowick. But if they're them, I think they're probably going to fall into the Ben Johnson trap, even though I don't think he's that good. But there's a few more openings and a few more big names. So if you've got some landing places you've been thinking of, I'd like to hear those.
Well, speaking of Jim Harbaugh and sleepovers, I'm pretty sure back in the day he like literally slept over at a recruit's house.
Quinn Nordine. It was a kicker.
I knew you'd know the name. I knew you'd know.
Yeah, he slept on his couch. Quinn was in my class at Michigan.
Try to be more committed than that as a head coach. Now, I do think, like, to me, it feels like the Chargers are the team that every coach should be wanting to coach, right? With Herbert, I mean, like, they haven't been able to sort of get over that hump, but like you've got one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And then you look at the Falcons and I feel like it's not as desirable. But then there's the other team, the Panthers, where you've got Bryce Young. I feel like I could see Bill Belichick going there and sort of trying to develop Bryce Young. I'm not saying like he's going to do it, but like I feel like that's a Bill Belichick-esque move. But yeah, you could be right about the the draft stuff too with the Commanders. I don't know. It's this type of stuff. It just feels so unpredictable sometimes. Like, and also if you were to travel back in time, even like 5 years ago, to tell someone Bill Belichick was going to be interviewing with the Falcons, like who would have saw that coming?
Absolutely. I think the Panthers are a really interesting situation because obviously the best coordinators in the league, they get buzzed around for head coaching jobs every year, right? And the Panthers defensive coordinator, Ejiro Evero, I hope I pronounced that right, he's phenomenal. But normally these names that you see getting bounced around for other jobs aren't on a team who has their own position open. I think the answer is too simple. You elevate Evero, keep the continuity of the one positive last year, that's secondary, and you bring in a kick-ass offensive coordinator to do what you can with Bryce Young. I mean, there's so many names available, or you could do what the Ravens did and dip down to college, do a lateral move, bring in college offensive coordinator to be a pro offensive coordinator. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure who, other than maybe like Brian Hartline if he wants to get the heck out of Columbus. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways the Panthers could go. It's a more interesting opportunity than people are giving it credit for.
And speaking of coaches, we need to talk about Alabama's new head coach, Kalen DeBoer, formerly of Washington, took that team to the playoff. The dude has pretty much won like everywhere he's gone. The only thing is he's got massive shoes to fill because no one is a winner like Nick Saban is. Do we think he's going to live up to the pressure and the criticism? Because Tuscaloosa, the job there is not the same as it is in Seattle.
No, and I think the question is, like, what exactly does he have to live up to? I think Kalen DeBoer can do a really good job, but frankly, these Alabama fans are going to accept nothing less than Saban or Saban minus at best. And no disrespect to Kalen, he's actually been dealt a pretty tough hand. Not just the expectations, but you've got recruits decommitting, right? With the portal, you can lose your current roster and everything's eroding. I don't want to say it's a rebuild effort he has to do, but he is not inheriting an ironclad situation. I thought when Saban stepped down, I thought they had a succession plan. The fact that it's someone who's not only not with the program yet, but like isn't an SEC or Alabama insider at all, shows me that this was a completely open process. Was he the right hire? I think he's a tremendous coach. It'll be interesting to see how he does recruiting wise, because he pulled some guys to Indiana with him, from Indiana with him, most notably Penix. So that wasn't really a recruiting job he had to do as head coach. I would have been interested in some other names for the spot. I think they offered Dan Lanning and he said no. Lane Kiffin, I don't know what kind of relationship he has with people in that building. But D'Amico Ryans, I don't know if he'd leave Stroud, but he's an Alabama alum. Then Brian Dable, who was their coordinator, and things are blowing up in New York. And then the obvious two, Bill Belichick, who's a close personal friend of Saban's, and Pete Carroll, who is one of 3 coaches to ever win a national championship in a Super Bowl. I think he is theoretically staying on as an advisor, but if you looked at his last press conference, it seems like he wants to coach football. And Alabama would have been a really cool way for him to end his adventure.
Can you imagine Bill Belichick dealing with the transfer portal and NIL? Like, I'm just imagining him, in his hoodie, just like the most disgusted look on his face, as like
a cut off crimson hoodie.
yeah. Which I'm not gonna lie, I'd probably buy one just because. But yeah, to me, I don't think there was a right hire to replace Saban. Like, it's an impossible task to do that. I mean, I think if there was going to be a right hire, it'd literally be Kirby Smart. Like, you can't just replace a dude who's won 7 national titles, 6 at Alabama. The good thing is, like, Kalen is a winner. I think he was 25-3 at Washington, 10-1 against ranked teams. But yeah, things don't look great at Alabama right now in the transfer portal and the recruiting trail, and it does feel like sort of a rebuilding effort. I don't know if you saw today, Caleb Downs, their freshman All-American safety, he's entering the transfer portal. Isaiah Bonds heading to Texas. Florida State has already poached like 5 of their players. And by the way, Florida State is benefiting more than anyone right now from this whole Alabama situation. Mike Norvell even getting that stupid contract extension despite winning, 1 ACC championship. Florida State is living the life right now. But I think the good news is they have Jalen Milroe, and it seems like he wants to stay there. Judging from what he said, his interaction with Kalen when they first met, to just enter next season with a quarterback who's been to the playoff, like, it is firmly planted there, I think is a positive, even if you're losing, talent around him.
I saw something crazy. It's funny you mentioned the Norvell extension. I think Saban and Kalen and several of the guys who were being looked at for the job, and maybe even Jed Fish, who took over Kalen's job, by the way, great hire for Washington in a pinch. But a lot of these guys have the same agent. And
Yeah,
that guy
Jimmy
is just
Sexton.
yeah, and he's just rolling in it right now. He obviously knew Saban was thinking about it. He gets his guy Kalen a big job, and he leverages the position to get his other guys big raises. So great for him. But last thing I want to say on this, you say there's almost no right hire, and then we talked about how I think Saban, frankly, I think he still believes that he could win with this group, but I don't think he wants to be part of this new era with a 12-team playoff and NIL and the transfer portal. Well, what does NIL sound like? It sounds like the only thing that ever stopped Pete Carroll, compensation scandals. And what does a 12-team playoff sound like? The NFL playoffs when Pete Carroll won his Super Bowl. I think Pete would have been perfect. It's like today's today's college is like the perfect blend of college and pro. And that's just a Pete Carroll situation for me. Or Jim Harbaugh. You probably wouldn't have to worry about the sign stealing allegations if you were down in the SEC.
Yeah, Pete would have been awesome, actually. Also, super lovable. Like, you can't hate him. But I'm sure Alabama fans could have found a way to hate him, of course. Also, I don't know if you knew this, but DeBoer's daughter, I think her name is Alexis. She's like a terrific softball player who's signed to Washington. And a lot of people thought like that was going to be a reason he was going to stay there. Like, oh, so he can watch his daughter play. And he just immediately jumped ship when Alabama came calling.
I mean, I don't know what the portal looks like for non-football sports, but maybe she can
And
come down
Alabama
to
softball.
Tuscaloosa. SEC softball is pretty serious, if I'm not mistaken.
It is absolutely, and Alabama is it's the Alabama of softball. Like, if that makes sense, like they are still really damn good. But I'm sure we'll be talking about softball later in season 2. Look at that plug right there. Let's get into some NFL divisional round predictions. We've got another terrific slate of games this weekend. Saturday, we have the Texans and Ravens and the Packers and 49ers. Then it's the Bucs versus Lions and Chiefs versus Bills on Sunday. We're going to get into the predictions. Let's start with the Texans and Ravens. I'll go first. I'm riding with the Texans. I know that the Ravens are an absolute buzzsaw. We saw what they did to the 49ers, but I think my point here is going to be that the Texans just beat the best defense in football, and they did it like convincingly. And when I say best, that's in terms of like yards per game, passing yards per game. I guess that can be, debated because I think the Ravens give up the least points per game, but they crushed them. And CJ Stroud is awesome. I'm just going to keep rolling with CJ Stroud here. Although I think last week I picked Joe Flacco to win and win it all. Or no, I said the winner of this was going to win it all. So I got to keep rolling with the Texans. Who do you got?
So it's interesting, that Browns defense, I should not have backed them. I knew this stat going into that game, and I still backed them. The Browns were the best scoring defense in the NFL in terms of home production and the single worst road defense in the entire league. I went to a Browns game. I experienced watching them in Cleveland, and the defense was so electric. I just believed in them too much. But as fun as the Texans are, I don't think anyone can roll with the Ravens. As I mentioned, I don't just have the Ravens winning. I have them covering the 9.5 point spread. They're well rested. Sometimes I worry about the loss of momentum, but not for a John Harbaugh team. Down to the coordinators, this is the best coached team in the league, top to bottom, and they're so talented. I think that the Ravens are going to run away with this one relatively, like maybe a 2-score game or something like that. Phenomenal football team.
Maybe I'm just rooting for them too because the Cowboys just got bounced and I need a Texas team to root for here. All right, let's hear your prediction for the Packers and 49ers.
Man, I missed on the Packers last week. Well, actually, they were my take the over. And man, I think almost every game, at least the indoor games, were all over candidates this week, if not complete overs. But I do think the Packers regression has to come eventually. Sorry, Tyler can't defend himself here, but Jordan Love is in a run of 9 games where he's thrown 21 touchdowns and 1 interception. I mean, he's playing really well, but he's not playing that well. No one plays that well. We're talking like 2016 Tom Brady, 2013 Peyton Manning at that point. Like, no offense to Jordan Love, but he can't do this forever. And San Fran has been the boogeyman for this team. After Aaron Rodgers said he would make the Niners regret passing on him, he is, of course, 0-4 or maybe 0-3 against them in the postseason. Sometimes as the favorite, sometimes as the underdog, always embarrassing. I don't, obviously Rodgers is gone, but the Niners, I mean, Shanahan can shut down this LaFleur offense. He's so familiar with it, if anyone can. And the Packers defense has fallen apart. I think the Niners will be able to score at will. This is another take the over candidate. I guess we'll get there in a moment, but let's go San Fran.
I think I'm going to take the Packers. Almost for the simple fact of what you just said. Like, Jordan Love has been terrific. And I want to see him succeed. Some of the throws he was making like off his back foot, the sidearm. It just reminded you of Aaron Rodgers. And like for Packers fans, it's like, of course, you've got another guy that looks like, the next great quarterback there. I don't know, man. He's just playing so well. I think there's also pressure on the 49ers to win it all. Like they're just expected to win it all. And I do think they've looked vulnerable, right? We saw the Ravens dismantle them. So like maybe this comes down to a few Brock Purdy throws that like he just doesn't make, or maybe it's a couple interceptions, whatever it may be. I'm gonna take Packers. I might as well just take all underdogs at this point. I don't like this.
I do think you have a point. As much love as Brock Purdy has gotten, I'm not there. He's better than I thought he was, but I do think he is the worst remaining NFC quarterback, the worst remaining playoff quarterback, and Love is probably the best remaining quarterback in the NFC. I can't believe I'm saying it, but it is tough to win when you have such a deficit at quarterback, although I think the coaching gap might be just as significant. This is a fun one. It's one of the most played playoff games in NFL history, two classic powers, and I can't wait to see. And this one's not going to be in the frigid cold of Wisconsin, so we could actually see some points.
All right, let's move on to the Lions and the Bucks. We've sort of already talked about it a little bit. I'll start here. I think the Lions win. I'll get personal here. So my family has only ever owned Fords. I have a Ford Focus sitting in the garage right now. My grandpa used to work for Ford, so we own Ford stock. I'm a Ford family guy. I'm not betting against the Ford family. I'm also not betting against Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, whose dad was like driving him. I don't know if you saw his dad was like driving him away from the game or after the game. What a wholesome moment. Like they probably stopped to get pizza and a Slurpee on the way out. Like I love that. I want to see them win because it's been like 3 decades since they've won a playoff game or whatever it is. They've just had so much heartbreak, but plus I just think the Bucks probably don't have enough firepower to beat the Lions.
If you had told me preseason that we'd get one of Baker Mayfield or the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship game, I'd have signed right up for that. I mean, as a fan and the narratives that I enjoy, this is definitely a win-win in a lot of ways, but I do think the Bucks keep rolling. They can absolutely get after the Lions' biggest weakness, which is their secondary, of course. And I do think they can defend more than the Rams. The secondary is a little questionable, but you got first-team All-Pro Antoine Winfield, who made winning play after winning play against Philly. And you mentioned Vita Vea, who is just like quietly a postseason monster. He came back just for the playoffs in 2020 and lifted them to that Super Bowl, in part. Obviously, you have Tom Brady and Gronk, but I do think this team, I think the Lions can also score plenty, but the Bucks are just going to have that knockout punch. Dan Campbell, I love him, but he makes some weird late game decisions. So I do think this is going to be Tampa moving on to the NFC Championship game after a preseason win total of like 4.5 at most sports books. Who would have thought?
Now, okay, so if the Lions win, I don't know if you've seen the stuff about like having Eminem versus Taylor Swift or whatever. I don't know if there's been so many, because Eminem has been so involved in the Lions, obviously. I'm kind of here for that. And I'm kind of here for them both to just like come on stage during the Super Bowl if it happens and like do a rap battle or like a sing off or something.
Can you imagine that Taylor Swift was offered this year's Super Bowl halftime show? Can you imagine? And this was before she was publicly dating Travis. She turned it down. Obviously, we'd know by now if she had it. But can you imagine she ends up being at the game just as a guest when she could have been the performer because her boyfriend is playing? I don't think he'll make it, but it's never impossible.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm also here if people just like cheer her on so much that she finally like goes on stage and kind of pushes Usher aside and is like, actually, I'll take it from here. All right, let's get to the final one. We got the Chiefs and the Bills. Huge game going to Buffalo. We saw the craziness that was that snowmageddon before the game. The fans are shoveling out snow out of the stadium. There's no assigned seating. It was awesome, in my opinion. Who do you have in this one?
So, as I alluded to, I do have the Chiefs, but I don't know if you've seen. There's a little voodoo magic going on with this one. Are you familiar with the Pit?
Yeah. Okay. Is that real? Like that?
I don't know. The rumor is, I'm not going to report this as if it's fact, but I am going to bring it up. Bills are building a new stadium. That is fact. And there is currently the stadium is not built at all. It's just a pit. That is also fact. And here's where the hearsay comes into fact. Apparently someone fell in a pit before the game and injured themselves a few weeks ago. The Bills won. It was when they were trying to turn around their season. And apparently someone has been sacrificed to the pit every week, and the Bills have kept winning. I, as one of the most noted Bills haters in the industry, am thinking about heading out to Orchard Park and just physically defending the pit, making sure no one makes it to the bottom, everyone stays safe, and the Bills don't have any magic on their side. But magic or not, I don't think they're taking down Mahomes and Reed. As I mentioned, there's a huge health edge on the Chiefs side. There's a big coaching edge, I think. I'm not a huge McDermott guy. I think Dable did a lot of the Josh Allen ascendancy a few years ago. While Allen's still playing great, I do trust Andy Reid a lot more. So this is a KC spot for me. The spread hit a field goal recently. It was at 2.5 for a long time. I fired on it at +3, but I also do think they win outright.
Okay. Speaking of the pit, yeah, I saw this on, I think USA Today had a story on it too, among other places. I think the only person that has enough security to stop Bills fans from jumping in the pit
is Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift needs to go to the pit with her bodyguards, whatever her crew is, and defend the pit. # defend the pit, Taylor Swift.
I don't even think she needs to use her security team. I just think if she took to Twitter and mobilized the Swifties, I think they could get the numbers needed to surround the pit, form a barricade of but I don't know if they're ready for Bills Mafia. It would be quite the moment, quite the playoff moment.
World War III is the Swift Army versus Bills Mafia. Yeah. Yeah, I already talked about. I think the Chiefs are going to win this one because I think it's finally Pat's chance to like prove that he can win a road game on the playoffs here. But also, I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. And also, like, can the Chiefs receivers catch a damn ball? Because, like, I can't watch any more of this Chiefs offense when dudes are just dropping them left and right. All right, let's get to take the over. Well, I'll have you start. We're going to take the over in one of the NFL divisional games. Hopefully, we don't have the same one, but if we do, we can always repick.
I have a backup as well, but yeah. I do, as I mentioned, I like the Bucs-Lions game. I don't think either secondary has the opportunity to run with the receiving core that the other team is putting out there. I mean, the Lions' vertical passing game has been awesome all year. Bucs' biggest weakness is their defensive back end. And you can say the literal same thing on the other side. Bucs don't have much of a run game, but I don't think they're even going to try, or at least they shouldn't. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, you even have like guys down the depth chart, like I think David Moore, making huge breakaway plays against the Philadelphia Eagles, who also have a bad secondary. So very similar blueprint to success, whereas I think the Lions will be a lot more functional offensively, playing at home especially.
Speaking of their sort of like back end receivers, did you see Trey Palmer? I saw this on Twitter. Apparently, every time he tweets, he's tweeted in his career college.
When he wakes up angry,
every time he tweets that he's pissed off, he scores a touchdown that day. Like when he
I gotta get into Trey Palmer's house and like knock over his coffee when he's not looking.
Just piss him off.
I'm pissed today. Trey Palmer for 3 scores against the Detroit Lions just because he's super mad.
And it's like, who is this dude? Yeah, I like that one. I'm going to go. I feel like this is obvious. Texans, Ravens, I saw it's 43.5. I don't know. I think just having the MVP and the Rookie of the Year, like both sort of explosive offenses, it's easy to root for. Also, it doesn't seem that high at all. So, yeah, free money right there. Except don't take my advice. Don't ever do it.
That one I'm definitely leaning over. I'm just a little afraid of the Texans against this Ravens defense, but it should go over. The other one I was looking at is the Packers-Niners, though. I mean, nice weather, 2 awesome offenses. And again, the Niners secondary is better than the other ones we've talked about, but it's definitely not their strength. So I do think that both these passing attacks could find space.
Yeah, and the Ravens defense is nasty. I think they're giving up like 16 points a game, which is like the best in the NFL. But just looking at what the Texans did against the Browns, I'm all in. And like I said, I got to have them go to the Super Bowl. I already called it. So we're going to get it.
I think the one takeaway is that the one over you should absolutely not be looking at is that Bills-Chiefs game. It's going to be a war. It's going to be winter on Lake Erie. I mean, Lord, I would not expect any amount of points in that one.
Yeah. If we had like a bet all your money on the under, I think it would be that one because I don't trust that at all. All right, let's get to Did You See This? We're going to pick something that we saw in the sports world, whatever it may be, from past week or so, something funny, something notable, whatever it may be. I'll start here. Everyone probably saw this one, but I want to talk about it because this one was a big one in the fantasy football group chat. Hot topic here. Did you see Bills fans throwing snowballs on the field, like as George Pickens is going into the end zone for a touchdown, a catch, whatever it may be? I want to ask, do we consider this home field advantage?
That's the definition of home field advantage. If there's not a rule
Okay.
against it, if there's not a rule against it and it can give you a competitive advantage, you have to do it. It's not even an option. Like if it's not explicitly banned and it can help your team, I really think that fans for certain teams deserve a huge amount of the credit. Like when I'm a Patriots fan, during the dynasty, I mean, we would lose one home game every 2 years. We'd have home field advantage and make good use of it. One year we went 3-5 on the road and still won the Super Bowl. And I do think the fans deserve credit for like creating that giant gap in performance. Obviously, they were 8-0 at home to make the playoffs with 3-5 on the road. And I think the Bills have one of the best home field advantages. Credit to them. Their fans create it. But I do think it's going to be a different story this weekend.
Yeah, I think, okay, is it Bush League? Is it childish on the Bills fans' part? Yeah, it is. But it's the Bills. And the Bills Mafia, we know this is right up their alley. But I kind of agree with you. I think this is home field advantage. And it kind of reminded me of the Miami Dolphins. Their stadium was built so that the sun can hit the sun hits the opposing sideline and heats it up like, I don't know, like 100 degrees more, whatever it may be.
It's like a 35-degree gap on a if they do the 4 p.m. time slot or something in the early season, it's like a 35-degree gap. I don't know how that's legal, but I think it's brilliant. And
it's
the Bills,
insane.
This is even less harmful. Like unless you're stuffing the snowballs with batteries or something, it's just kind of like fun and distracting. If it doesn't hurt anyone, just do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say you'd have to hit a guy like in the face with a snowball for I think like in the heat of the moment for it to really matter. But yeah, I think it's home field advantage in the same way that the Dolphins created. And the difference there is that the Dolphins built that stadium so that they could do it. It's not like the Bills were planning on having snowballs thrown. The only thing I want to see now is another snow game, and I want Taylor Swift to have like a bazooka Nerf gun, just like firing off the biggest snowballs possible at Josh Allen.
Oh man, that would be an absolute blast. Just turn it against them. Again, this is something you need the numbers of Swifties to flip around.
Let's mobilize the Swifties. Let's do it.
Absolutely. I have a couple. Did you see this? Because I just can't choose between these two. One is the last touchdown of the third quarter. It was a long touchdown to Luke Musgrave in the Packers-Cowboys game. That was the single worst defensive play call I've ever seen in my life. And I say defensive play call, not broken coverage. I've looked at this play. I don't think people actually messed up their assignments. I think there was just this giant patch of empty grass. On a similar note, the Cowboys and Eagles, they're the fifth pair of division mates to make the playoffs, go one and done without ever leading. The last teams to do it, the 2021 Cowboys and Eagles. Yes. It's just NFC East heritage. But the other thing I want to talk about, I do have an article about this online on fanbuzz.com, so go take a look at it. But Connor Stallions has a Cameo account now. If you didn't see it, it's the perfect gift for a Michigan fan. It's even more perfect gift for an Ohio State fan. Can you get him to say go blue? Definitely. Can you get him to admit that all the allegations are true? I don't know. I would love to try. I would love to see if you could get him to say that, and then he gives like a big wink to the camera. I mean, I might sink $70 into it just to see what we can get out of it. That is his fee. But if you didn't see that, go get it. It's got to be. I don't know how long he's going to be there, but it's a great gift for the college football enthusiast in your life.
So for $70, could we bring Connor Stallions onto the podcast and ask him that question, and he gives us 30 seconds and an answer? I mean,
it's a really good question. I think the shoot has to be on his time, but if we say in the blurb this clip is going to be spliced into an episode,
there it is.
It's his choice whether or not to accept it.
Well, I mean, it's $70, right? Also, that feels cheap for him. Like given the amount of times his name is mentioned on Twitter anytime.
I agree. I think he's going to be flooded with requests. I think that's way below market. Although I don't think he can coach anymore. So we'll see. I don't know what his livelihood's going to be other than Cameo.
Yeah, honestly, he'd be smart to start a podcast or something and just talk about everything. I mean, the amount of people that would tune in. But yeah, so that'll be coming up next week on season 2 is going to be Connor Stallions. No, I'm just kidding. AJ's in the background here smiling. He's like, all right, well, that's going to do it for the first episode of season 2. If you guys like the show, please like and subscribe. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, whatever it is, YouTube, we're on there. And don't forget to check out our newsletter. Make sure you sign up for that. The link is in the description. And we will see you guys next week to break down the NFL Conference Championship weekend. We'll see which teams are going home. We've already had some big losses, notably the Cowboys, the Eagles. So I'm sure we'll have something to talk about next week. But until then, we'll see you guys. here's my like big head like prediction here, my 200 IQ prediction. I think the winner, and you can quote me on this, the winner of the Browns Texans wins the Super Bowl. Boom, ship it.